Hello YouTube, got another 357 mag here again with another video on reloading. Today I'm going to be showing you how to reload 75x54 French for the Moss 36 rifle. Now the loads I'll be using today are developed strictly for the Moss 36. They're not meant for the Moss 4956. You will have to work up your own loads for that rifle. But once again, today we'll be showing how to reload 75x54 French. Now this is a once fired casing, but I'll actually be using brand new brass. These are just some that I worked up for this rifle just to get a test. I made 3 different test loads and found the one that works best. So we'll be using that today. The load that I'll be using today is out of the Hornady Handbook of Reloading, Volume 8. Now I'll be using a 150 grain full metal jacket bullet right here, and I'll be using 39.5 grains of Hodgdon Varget powder, which will give me 2,300 feet per second velocities, which is relatively close to what the military velocity is with the 140 grain bullet. But I find the 150 grain gives almost a dead-on point of aim accuracy. When you aim at 100 yards, put the target on just on top of the sights, and you will be getting very good accuracy out of these rifles. Now, before we start reloading, in step 1, we will need safety glasses. Always wear your safety glasses when dealing with live primers. Now, this still is step 1, but I am kind of shortcutting it in the fact that I don't need to resize and deprime. This is brand new brass that has already been deburred and is ready for loading. This is actually Privy Partisan 75x54 French. Really good brass. It's available from Graf & Sons. I would recommend checking out their website. They have really good prices on a lot of stuff, and that's where I find most of my metric military caliber reloading supplies. Now, since I'm skipping the resize, I'm only repriming on the press, or first time priming. See, I seat the primer right in there. Now I'll do 5 of these, and then I'll show you how the powder's done. And there you have it. Now we'll do powder charge. Now the powder charge I'm using for this is the 39.5 grains of powder. Now I'm also using a CCI number 200 large rifle primer. I'll go ahead and charge these cases. Now I've already double checked this powder charge. And there you have it, 5 charged cases. I don't know if you can see the powder in there, but it's in there. Now, the bullet I'll be using today is a 150 grain full metal jacket. It's a Privy Partisan bullet, but you can really use any 150 grain bullet you choose. I'm just using these because they're cheap, and they're pretty good bullets. Really have had no issues with them accuracy-wise. They're not as accurate as a Hornady bullet, but they still are very good. So, I've already got 1 round I completed here, and I did this to double check the seating and the crimp of the bullet. So, I'll go ahead and do the other 4. Now I go slowly to prevent any case neck damage, but there you go. Complete 75x54 French. we go. Now for the final review. Well, here we are with the completed product. 75x54 French ammunition. The 150 grain full metal jacket bullet. Now you can see that there are some in here that have already been fired, but as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I had just gotten this gun and had some factory loads ran through it. They were okay in accuracy. Did shoot a little high, but I tested these 3 different powder charges according to the Hornady manual and found that they were almost dead on at point of impact with the 150 grain bullet at 50 yards out to 200 yards. So needless to say, the French should have probably used the 150 grain bullet versus the 140, because that's what seems the sights are actually zeroed in for. But there you have it, completed 75x54 French. Now if you wish to see more videos on reloading metric calibers, shooting these rifles, and disassembly of them, I'm actually posting a disassembly video of the French Moss as well, so I'd recommend checking that out if you own this rifle. Gun Nut 357 mag out. Hello YouTube, Gun Nut 357 mag here again with another video on reloading. Now today I will be reloading 7.5x55mm Swiss ammunition to near military specs and velocities. Now, I say near military spec and velocity because I'm reducing the powder charge just slightly below what would be required to duplicate the GP11 round, because I want to reduce any wear that may occur on my 1911 Schmidt-Rubin style long rifle. Now, if I was just shooting it out of my K31, I would not have a problem doing the full power load, because the K31 action is much stronger than the 1911 long rifle Schmidt-Rubin style action. Now this also goes for the 1911 style carbine. It's basically the same. And this ammo will also work in the 96/11 rifles that were converted to handle the GP11. So this ammo is pretty universal across all of them. I did do another video on reloading 7.5 Swiss, but that was 150 grain ammo that was loaded as plinking ammunition for my K31 here. And I did shoot some of that out of my 1911 long rifle, and I don't know if it was the rate of twist or what it was, but it sprayed the bullets everywhere. Whereas I loaded up a few rounds of this ammo, the load that I'll be showing you today, and tested it in the 1911 long rifle and got an 1.25" group at 200 yards. That was something that pretty much put me in awe. So this load is extremely accurate in the 1911 long rifle and is nearly a tack driving load in the K31. So at 200 yards they performed almost identical to one another, but I do think the 1911 long rifle did do just a fraction better than the K31 with this particular load. But once again, it is a universal load that will be good across most of the Swiss rifles, except for, I believe it's the 1898 or 1899, which was not even designed for the 75x55 load. It was designed for the 7.5x53 cartridge, so it won't even work with these. It's a black powder load, or a semi-smokeless black powder load. So that's a whole different video and story, but I will talk in a different video about the strengths and weaknesses of each one of these actions and the differences and advancements that occurred between these, and why this is a Schmidt-Rubin action and this is technically not a Schmidt-Rubin action. So I'll explain that in another video, but for now, let me show you how to reload 75x55 Swiss. Alright, now the first step before you resize your casings is to coat them with case lube. Now I'll be using Hornady one-shot case lube, and I've got my casings in a little bit of an old salad box here, and I punched a small hole in one side, just big enough to fit this nozzle through, so that when I spray the case lube on, I don't have to use as much of it, and I don't waste it everywhere and make a mess. Now, I like Hornady one-shot case lube because it's the only one I've found that truly dries after you resize. If you let your ammunition sit out in your reloading tray for about 10 minutes, it's dry and you don't even know your case lube's on there. So this is an excellent product from Hornady. So I'll go ahead and squirt in there for about 2 seconds. basically what I do is, with a small amount of casings that I have in here, which is only about 25, I believe, I'll just go 1, 2, 3, and then 4 across there. And I go in that same speed, like just about that. Not too fast, but that gets just enough lube on there to lubricate them, but it's not excessive. There we go. Let's take the lid off, and they're good to go. Now, the die set I'll be using is the Lee 2-die set in 75x55 Swiss. Now, I know Hornady, and I believe it's RCBS or Redding, also offer the K31 die set and 1911 die set. Now, there's a different sizing base between the two rifles, just in the fact of just different head spacing between the two. But from what I've found is, if you take and set up your decapping die by moving your press ram the whole way up, screwing it down till it contacts your ram or your shell holder, then you take it about another 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn until you feel, well, at least on an RCBS press, and I believe Hornady presses the same way, the press cam. You hear this? When I move it down, listen a second. Hear that? That's the press camming, and that basically is telling you that you're full-length resized. Now, if you have a standard press that does not have the camming action, you basically just screw it down until your shell plate hits your die body, and that's all you need to do. Pretty simple and straightforward, but it resizes them far enough that they can be used in everything from the K31 all the way to the 9611 rifles. So I'll go ahead and do about 5 of them here. Now, I'm also re-priming on the press with my RCBS Auto Prime, so that does save a little bit of effort. And from what I've found is, using the CCI number 200 primers, they're relatively clean. So my primer pockets don't get terribly big. I'll decap one here and show you. Now, if you see, there is I don't know if you can see it too well, but there is a slight blackening to the actual primer pocket, but there's no bulky carbon buildup. And that's a combination of the Varget powder and the clean CCI number 200 large rifle primers. Now, I do clean my primer pockets about every 3rd time I reload the casings, and I just do it on my RCBS Case Prep Center. And I'll make a video of doing that, but this is the 2nd time they have been reloaded. I'm dropping them everywhere, coated with case lube. Can't hold on to them. There you go. That's enough to give you an idea of how to resize it. So now we'll move on to adding the powder charge. Alright, now as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the load I will be using is slightly less than mil-spec velocity, and the powder charge I'll be using for that is 40 grains of Hodgdon Varget. Now, if I wanted an absolute mil-spec round that I could shoot very easily in my K31 and not worry about wear on the action, you can do 41.7 grains, and that is exactly the same velocity as the original GP11 ammunition. So if you do wish to do that for just your K31, you can, but once again, that's a maximum load. So I would recommend approaching that very cautiously. And once again, if you hurt yourself doing that, going to maximum load, or your rifle, I'm not responsible for it. So one thing I want to do here is show you that I do validate my powder charges, and that my RCBS powder measure does throw very consistent charges. Because I've had people comment on my videos, oh, you're not checking your powder charges, you're going to blow my head off if I were your friend shooting it, and I wouldn't want to be your friend shooting your loads, and the whole story goes on. So I just want to show people that my Uniflow powder measure does drop very accurate loads, and that I do validate them with my powder scale. So go ahead and I'll pause the video here a moment, and I'll zoom in on my scale here to show you that I am dropping 40 grains of powder. Alright, now what I've done here is I've zeroed my RCBS 505 scale to make sure that it is level on the table and that I will get an accurate reading for my measurement. Now as you can see here, it's zeroed here, it's zeroed at the 10 grain increment, zeroed at the 1 grain increment, and zeroed at the 10th grain increment. So it is good to give me a good validated powder charge reading. So what I'll do here is right here, I don't know if you can see it too well, but right there's 40 grains. So I'll go ahead and move just the 10 grain increment out to 40 grains. There's 50, there's 40. So it is right at 40 grains. Now, I have nothing in my pan, of course, so I'll go ahead and take my powder measure and dispense a charge. Now I'll let it on my scale and let it sit evenly. And there you go. It is sitting directly at the 0 mark. So I am dropping exactly 40 grains of powder. Now, just to show you that my powder charge, or my powder measure, does do a good job, and I'll show you how I do that. I'll post a video on some tweaking of the RCBS powder measure to get it to drop consistent loads. And it's a pretty easy, straightforward video. Now, as you can see, once again, once the scale settles down, it is right at 0 again. So, now you can expect, even no matter how good you get your actual Uniflow powder measure, you can expect about not a 1/10 of a grain, but about a 15th to a 20th of a grain variation, which is better than you can even get with electronic powder scales. So I'll show you how I tweak my RCBS Uniflow powder measure to get the proper charge. So I'll go ahead and charge the casings here. Okay, so now that we have our fully validated powder charge, we are good to load the remaining 26 casings that I do have here in my MTM Case Guard Universal Loading Tray. I've had a few people ask which tray I'm using, so that's what it is. It's the MTM Case Guard Universal Loading Tray. Now what I watch for when I'm dispensing the powder charge is I want to avoid any sticks. Like if I wind up dumping one of the powder charges and I get stuck about halfway up because a grain of powder gets jammed in the measure funny, I want to dump that casing and remeasure that charge, as in redisperse it through the powder measure. And I do that so that I eliminate any variability that may occur between powder charges. So that's another technique that I use to get consistent, even powder charges. Now what I do is once I'm done as well dispensing the powder charge, I'll take my casings, and I have a light under my cabinet here, and I look down into the casings to make sure that the powder charge is even in each case and that each case is charged, because I don't want to have a casing that has essentially a double charge in it, which is hard to do when you're filling casings with this much powder already. You're almost full with them, so it's hard to double charge one, but you never want to take that chance. So, move on to bullet seating. Alright, now the bullet I've selected for this load is the Hornady 180 grain soft point boat tail bullet. Now there's two reasons why I selected this particular bullet. One is that it is only 6 grains heavier than the original GP11 round, and two is the fact that the crimp groove is set pretty high on the bullet, so that if I set the bullet into the case to the crimp groove, it will not wind up getting stuck or jammed in the rifling when trying to chamber a round, which is a common problem most people will have, is they'll try and seat the bullets out too far on a K31 or a Schmidt-Rubin style rifle, and they'll wind up jamming the bullets into the rifling, getting the bullet stuck in the action, getting powder all over your action, and just creating a big mess. So you want to make sure you get a bullet that has a high crimp groove on it and a good amount of taper to the bullet. Now, actually, a third reason why I also chose this is because this has a lot of surface area, which means a lot of area to contact the rifling, which will increase accuracy and help stabilize the bullet better out of shorter barrel rifles such as the 1911 carbine and K31, which has proven, this bullet has proven to shoot quite well out of my K31. So, I'll show you what I mean by setting it to the crimp depth here, the crimp groove depth. When I set the bullet, you can see, I use this one as comparison, how far down inside the case the bullet actually goes. And that is perfectly alright because you can't really have that bullet protruding any farther out than it is right now. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. When reloading for 7.5 Swiss, do not set the bullets out too far or you will wind up with a mess in your action. If you want to test how far you can set your bullets out, just simply take a casing that is unprimed without any powder in it and set the bullet into the depth you'd like to try and chamber it. If the round won't chamber and the bullet gets stuck in the action, then you know you've gone too far. Then you'll just basically have to take a brass rod and tap the bullet out of the rifling in the chamber. So that's an easy way to find out the seating depth you can achieve with a 7.5 Swiss, but this is about as far as I've been able to go with the Hornady bullet, the 180 grain soft point. I'll load a few rounds here and then go on to the final review. Now you notice I do keep a very steady, even pressure when pushing the casing with the bullet into the die so that I do not wind up crushing the neck of the case. And there we go. And I also do want to mention, I did put a very slight crimp using the taper crimp in the die on the bullet just below, well actually at the crimp groove, at the neck of the case. And what that will do is when you taper it slightly into the crimp groove, it'll prevent the bullet from setting back into the casing when chambering in a straight pull or Smith-Rubin style rifle. So, move on to the final review. Alright, here we are with the completed 7.5 by 55 Swiss near mil spec load. Now I do want to show you here real quick what I mean by the amount of taper in the original GP11 ammunition bullet versus modern commercial bullets. And you can see that the original GP11 round has an extremely high amount of taper from the base of the bullet at the case neck, or the case mouth, out to the tip of the bullet. And you can see how the Hornady bullet has a slightly straight neck and then tapers quite rapidly as well. And like I said, you cannot set these out very far because there's a lot of taper with this, but not a lot of taper with this. And this will wind up contacting the rifling pretty quickly and, like I said, getting stuck in your chamber. So you do want to seat the bullets deeper. And just wanted to show this example of the comparison between the long, highly tapered Swiss GP11 round and its bullet and the load that I've worked up with the 180 grain Hornady soft point boat tail. Now I also do want to show you how these slide into a clip here, and I'll just drop a round in there to show you that there is a little bit of space in front of the bullet, but that's fine. There's actually not much at all. The GP11 round, when you slide it into the clip, is basically touching the front of the clip. This is not, it's just slightly shorter, and that's one thing I actually do want to do here real quick. Let me get out my micrometer and I'll give you the overall length of one of these rounds. Now the overall length, if you can see on the dial, is 2.911. Now there can be a slight variation in that just depending upon the soft point of the bullet you use, because soft point bullets, unlike straight full metal jacket bullets, do have a little variation in their tips, so they can be longer or shorter than that, but a good rule of thumb is probably going to be right around the maximum overall length of 2.915 is about as maximum I would say you can seat one of these bullets out. And that's from just my personal experiences. But then you start approaching a longer length, you may not fit into the magazine of the gun very well, or you may wind up catching the nose of the bullet on the chamber when chambering the round, which is something I also did find when trying to seat these bullets out too far. They do catch in the chamber of the rifle and won't properly chamber, and they'll set the bullet back into the casing, which is a mess as well. So there are some, you could say, finesse points to loading the 7.5 Swiss cartridge for the straight pull Swiss carbines and long rifles, but it's just something that with a little bit of practice and work you can get right, and you can make some high quality ammunition with. So I don't want to scare anybody away in the fact that reloading is scary, dangerous, or can be difficult. It's quite easy, and once you get your system down, like I have, you can produce very good quality ammunition for a good price, which I'm producing this for about 34 cents a round, which is about a 30-cent savings over buying the actual GP11 ammunition. So depending whether or not you want to take that little bit of effort and possibly get loads that are extremely accurate like these are, or just go buy yourself some surplus. That's your choice. But as far as reloading goes, it does save money. It does take a little bit of time, so you do have to have a little free time on your hands. But you also get the satisfaction of having ammunition that you've loaded, you've put your time into, and you know is good quality ammo. So if anybody has any questions on reloading 75x55 Swiss, feel free to send me a message. I'll be glad to respond and answer your questions. And also, I do plan to do a video on the cost to benefit ratio of reloading versus buying ammo, so stay tuned for that as well. So for now, Gun Nut 357 Mag out.